you have some problems at the front door, sir? Were you carded? Did you have you didn't need a mask, so you were okay there.
No mask, but he wanted to know if his rates were going up and down, and that was too bad. So
you gave him an evaluation when you came in. So, well, just cancel from Officer Polis and just tell him we found him. The silver alert needs to be canceled on the good commissioner. How you doing?
Doing great.
Good Memorial Day?
Had a good Memorial Day. Visited family and did all the good things I'm supposed to do.
I got to tell you, there were people who the president was. Some of his remarks over the weekend for Memorial Day were it was just bizarre. And Kamala Harris saying have a good long holiday or something like that, a good long weekend, and not even mentioning the men and women who've given their lives in service as the vice president. You would think that they would think about this before they did it.
They have no clue. You know, the best way to avoid all of that is just don't turn on the TV. Don't listen to them.
Very seldom. I don't think I've watched news in a while. I mean, it's something I just cannot do anymore. But for us, and I was out and about a little bit over the weekend, and on Monday, yesterday, I listened to the programs that our staff put together here with some of the interviews from the Vietnam people, and it was absolutely fantastic. And you were also a veteran of that war.
That I was, Paul. I was a veteran of Vietnam. I got a text early this morning from my good friend Walter Michelle, who's chair of the Senate Insurance Committee.
Yeah.
And he attended the Ridgeland Memorial yesterday in Ridgeland, Mississippi. And he mentioned, he said, about a friend of yours, Mendel Kemp. And Mendel and I served in Vietnam together. He's also on the Veterans Board. Good man. A really, really good man.
You've seen him lately? I mean, it's been a while.
I hadn't seen Mendel in maybe 3 months, but I keep up with him through Stacy Pickering, who's head of the Veterans Affairs Board.
We had Stacy on last week, too, but it was a good program.
You know, he's got a great program going on the Gulf Coast. If we get all the funding done, we've got a new vets home going in down there. Of course, Kamala Harris and President Biden may cancel all of that if we're not careful.
No idea what they're up to. One of the breaking stories this morning is he's the way it was worded on Fox is he's planning some radical changes in immigration. So I have no idea what that means. Radical changes would be go back to what we had in the former administration because it was working. So that's another story, another topic. There are a couple of things here I want to talk about. Number one is there was some news last week or the week before. Senator Kennedy was on the floor of the Senate talking about this and asking, well, maybe it was a hearing, as far as the flood insurance about to roll in. Some high-risk areas are going to be hit. Does that include Mississippi?
Mississippi has about 61,000 National Flood Insurance Program policies in effect in the state.
Yeah.
And we'll have very few people that will have any bad increases. I think we've got 42. That's a number that everybody kicks around. Actually, it's a few more than 42 when you dig up under the cover. That will get some
42 total properties.
42 properties out of 61,000 will have increases that exceed $100 a month. Now, those are people in harm's way that didn't build to the elevation they were supposed to build to. So,
is that on the coast or is that the river system?
That's on the coast, and half of them on the river system. That's where people built on the inside of the levee, or the outside of the levee is the way they said, close to the river. And they're usually hunting camps a second home, so those are the ones that we get the increases. Now, you remember, Paul, that I sued the federal government and FEMA back in 2013 with the Biggert Waters Act of 2012 over the draconian rate increases that were to take effect. And we won that battle, and now you're seeing the rates go up on properties that are actually in harm's way. In other words, Mississippi's not subsidizing Louisiana. Louisiana's got almost 500,000 policies, and they're going to have some really big increases. The good news for Mississippi, we've got private companies writing flood insurance. We've got Coastal American that writes a flood endorsement on the homeowners on the Gulf Coast. They have over 1,000 policies. So we've got a handle on our problem.
I don't want to sound cold-hearted on here, but in some of these places where it's flooded time and time again, I think that's what they're basically talking about. They, and it's not a 500-year flood. It's every 2 or 3 years they're flooding, or at least every 5 or 10 years they're flooded, and sooner or later somebody's got to say we're not going to pay anymore.
Well, I've always contended, you've heard me say this more than once, that you get one bite of the apple and then you need to get out of harm's way.
Yeah.
whether it's in flood or whether it's in building a stronger home or hurricanes or whatever.
I think some of these are multi-million-dollar homes, also on the coast of maybe in the Northeast and places like that they bought. They ought to self-insure if that happens over and over. That's the only thing that they can do.
Some of them do self-insure because you got a $250,000 limit on the coverage, not including your content.
So what else is going on as far as I know? There are a lot of things, and I want to cover as many as we possibly can, but there are some new changes, too, as far as health insurance, or are there some new changes?
There are some new changes coming down on health insurance, and one of the changes that we really need is I instituted a bulletin on telemedicine, if you recall, back in March of last year, on the 16th of March of 2020. And the House of Representatives killed that bill it wasn't our bill, it was the State Medical Association's bill to extend telemedicine, passed our bulletin. And the governor had agreed with several of the senators that he would keep his emergency order in effect until January of next year. But I understand he's going to cancel that emergency order sometime in July. We're looking very seriously at what we can do from an insurance point of view to keep telemedicine alive, and there's an importance to the consumers out there that this be done. So,
was there a reason for that, as far as an economical reason, or is this?
We had one company that did not want telemedicine to be extended.
No. For the cancellation itself, if he said he was going to do it until January next year, and now since July,
I think he's just trying to get all his executive emergency orders out of rescinded the way he can.
What does it mean for the people of this state as far as telemedicine is concerned when that happens in July? We'll cover that with the insurance cut. So when you guys think about the Mississippi legislature handling things that are kind of ridiculous,
evidently Oklahoma has doesn't have a lot to worry about, but I disagree with that guy. I think they got a lot more to do than worry about Bigfoot.
Killing Bigfoot didn't go over well with the snowflake and woke crowd, even though it was a joke and nothing more than a promotional play for the festival, which is handled every year at the 1st of October. So $3 million if you can capture Bigfoot unharmed. So there you are. All right, let's get back to, we were talking about several different things, and risk risk ratings of the state of Mississippi down at 2.0.
2.0.
Now, what does that mean?
2.0 is the new FEMA flood maps. Anything prior to the 2.0 are called pre-FEMA. Well, I won't say anything, but homes built prior to the original flood maps are considered pre-FEMA. We had a lot of those on the Gulf Coast, and the primary resident increases are similar to those that we've seen in past years under FEMA number 2. That's NFIP number 2. So the big increases are going to come on homes that are what we call second homes, vacation homes, where people did not build them correctly. They're built outside of the levee, along the river, or in harm's way.
When you say big, what are we talking about?
I'm
now
talking
they're
about
$100 a month?
Well, you're looking at 23% increase in some of them, so that's big increase.
Yeah.
And second homes, are rated differently from primary homes, and I've given you a sheet that's giving you all the primary homes in case somebody calls and says how many homes.
The secondary home is qualified by not.
It's not a primary residence.
Doesn't have a homestead exemption.
No homestead exemption. It's not a primary residence, and those people will have some pretty hefty increases.
No way to avoid that.
Well, there's a way to avoid it. Just don't build in a floodplain. You need to stay out and build a safer home, too.
Yeah.
This is not rocket science.
I understand that.
Indians have known it for 30,000 years. You build out of the floodplain and to build a stronger home.
I
learned that in Sunday school.
I remember a hunting camp that we used to go to that the guy had a house there, and every 2 or 3 years it would flood. And every 2 or 3 years, every year he would build it back up, and woe is me, I'm in a floodplain. I said, you know what? Sooner or later, you're going to realize that you keep building there, you're still going to be in a floodplain.
Well, I served with a senator who had a home outside of the levee over around Greenville, and he said, "What do I do, Chaney?" And I said, "You raise it up, get it out of harm's way." The last time I talked to him, he said, that thing's 23 feet in the air. I said, well, you might even consider 43 feet. That's what the river's going to.
Yeah, and that was the lower level, so forget about the upstairs deck. So.
Super guy, though. He's a Superman.
How do we look as far as health insurance? Let's go back to health insurance.
Let's go. All right, health insurance. Our Director of Life and Health, Bob Williams, is on the Gulf Coast talking about telemedicine with all the Medical Association over the weekend in Destin. And that's a big issue for us. We're going to see some rate increases in some areas, but under the ACA, the Biden administration is spending some more of your tax dollars to lower rates for people even up to 500% of the poverty level. So we think rates are going to be low for people that are on the ACA, but you'll see some slight increases, not much, on private insurance. And the problem you have in Mississippi, you only have two companies that sell private individual health insurance. It's hard to find private individual health insurance if you're not employed.
For people who don't know this, as far as the telemedicine deal, the governor's order allowed you to call in, do your telemedicine thing on video for the most part. I guess it could be on audio without video.
If your doctor knows you could be on audio,
and you could your insurance would cover that.
Your insurance would cover. Now,
as an official visit.
As an official visit. But now here's the key thing. If you, instead of having to go to the doctor to get your prescriptions refilled every 6 months, you could call in and they would refill them, and it wouldn't cost you $65 for the office visit. It would cost you maybe $20, whatever it took time to call the pharmacy and get them refilled. So it was a savings of time and money for the doctor's office, for the administrator, for the patient. And in addition to that, during the COVID pandemic, you didn't have to go to the office and be exposed to COVID.
Yeah.
So it was a win-win for everybody. And the third part of this is that we were able to deliver medicine to the Delta and some of the rural areas of the state where people can't get to a doctor. So this works pretty good, right, especially for emergency medicine.
And the whole thing on this one was caused basically by Blue Cross Blue Shield, who did not want to be in that program.
That's my understanding.
So the governor extended it to January, now says we're going to cut it back to July. Is that July 1st or July 30th?
Well, that I can't answer. You'd have to talk to the governor. Yeah. I just do not know.
And after that, when you do a telemedicine call, it's going to be charged whatever they charge, but the insurance is not going to pay for it.
Well, most of the concern by one of the insurance companies was over how they would pay for mental health parity, and they may code them to pay them, say, for 20 minutes of consultation when you needed 40, and that's been the issue. So that's really where the problem.
So the whole roof was over the mental health aspect of
everything was over the mental health.
How can you handle a mental health situation or call with the brevity of a 20-minute call?
Well, you got suicide lines. Just think about all of this. You got good ways. If somebody needs to talk to someone, you can use a phone. And sometimes you talk them off the ledge. It's a pretty good system. The statistics show that it works.
Last time we were on here, you mentioned something about Medicaid, and you said and I've quoted you as much as I possibly can. I had to paraphrase you because I didn't write it down, but it's not as simple as the 92 cents on a dollar or the 98 cents on a dollar, whatever it happens to be. You said. Now, would you explain that again for future people who come on here?
Well, it's easy for the government to say, look, we're going to give you 95 cents on every dollar that you spend on Medicaid, but to get the 95 cents, you got to pay for it out of the state's treasury first, and you got to meet all the federal rules, which is the game. That's exactly what we do today. And they may determine that we're not going to reimburse the state of Mississippi. And then when you really look at the plan that came out of Washington, out of CMS, it ended up costing the state of Mississippi $265 million if we expanded Medicaid. So the jury's still out on what you should do. I do not think that I want to say this again, that the referendum was a way to go. Of course, that's dead because of what's happened with the Supreme Court. And, Paul, when I was in the legislature, we tried to address the 5 congressional districts versus 4, and you just couldn't get people to sit down and talk about it. But it's got to be addressed by the legislature, not by the governor, not by the courts. It should be addressed by the legislature. That's what they're elected to do. But Medicaid expansion is very complicated, and it needs to be really looked at before we pull the trigger to expand Medicaid.
But there's no cap on the number of people as long as they fall within that household income.
There's no cap.
There could be 300,000. It could be 400,000, or 5 years from now, it could be more than that.
Well, if you look at the number, depending on who you talk to, Kaiser Family Foundation is the one we normally look at, and then we've got our own way to look at census by county. We've got the ability to look at census by county of people that are uninsured in Mississippi. We think that there's probably 400,000 people that could go on Medicaid in addition to the $750,000 you've got today. But probably out of that $400,000, less than $150,000 would actually go on Medicaid. The best way to solve Medicaid is sell an insurance policy that you can stop after a year in case